Welcome all for the lecture on optical isomerism. Before discussing about optical isomers, we shall have a brief introduction for stereochemistry. Stereochemistry is the branch of chemistry which deals with the spatial arrangement of atoms and groups in a molecule and its relation to the properties of the molecule. Isomers. What are isomers? The different compounds with the same molecular formula are called isomers. The concept of different molecules existing with the same molecular formula is known as isomerism. Now we shall see how isomers are classified. Let us consider we have two molecules A and B. If they are having the same molecular formula, then they are isomers. And if these isomers are having the same connectivity of atoms, then they are stereoisomers. If they have some difference in the connectivity of atoms, then they are structural isomers, and there are different types of structural isomers like functional isomers, positional isomers, and chain isomers. Now, if the isomers are having the same connectivity of atoms, and if they differ only in the spatial arrangement of atoms and groups in the three-dimensional space, then they are called stereoisomers. And if these stereoisomers are interconvertible by rotation about carbon-carbon single bond, then they are called conformational isomers. If they are not interconvertible by rotation about carbon-carbon single bond, then they are called configurational isomers. And if the configurational isomerism is due to a restricted rotation about carbon-carbon double bond, then those isomers are called geometrical isomers. And if there is no restricted rotation, then such configurational isomers are called optical isomers. And if these isomers are the mirror images of each other, which are non-superimposable on each other, then they are called enantiomers. And the isomers which are not the mirror images are called diastereomers. So, the optical isomers, which are being the non-superimposable mirror images, are called enantiomers or optical isomers. Isomers, which are non-superimposable mirror images of each other, are called enantiomers, and this kind of isomerism exhibited by isomers or the enantiomers is known as enantiomerism or optical isomerism. And these enantiomers, let us see these two molecules A and B. These are the mirror images. Let us consider this as the mirror. A and B are the mirror images of each other. Now, you just take this molecule out from the plane and just try to put it on the molecule B. Now, when you place the molecule A on B, R4 will be eclipsing with R2, and we will get R2 above this R4. So the similar groups are not exactly matching with each other, and that is what we call as non-superimposability. So these two molecules, which are the mirror images and not being superimposable, are called enantiomers. Optical isomerism arises from the non-superimposability or chirality, which is otherwise called handedness. If we just look at our two hands, they are just looking at like the mirror images, and if we keep one hand on the other, they are not exactly matching with each other. That is called handedness. and such a property is called chirality or non-superimposability. So the enantiomers are non-superimposable and hence they are called chiral molecules. And these chiral molecules, the enantiomers, interact with the plane polarized light and rotate the plane of the plane polarized light in the clockwise direction or in the anti-clockwise direction. So the enantiomers which are rotating the plane of the plane polarized light in the clockwise direction are called dextrorotatory isomers, and those who are rotating the plane of the plane polarized light in the anti-clockwise direction are called levorotatory isomers. Dextrorotatory isomers are denoted or represented with a prefix d, small d, or plus, and the levorotatory isomers are represented with small l or minus. So these enantiomers, these molecules which are capable of rotating the plane of the plane polarized light are called optically active molecules. What is plane polarized light? The ordinary light, monochromatic light, propagates through different planes which are perpendicular to the axis of propagation. When this normal light, which propagates through different planes, when allowed to pass through a polarizer, usually a nickel prism, which is made up of calcite, it allows the light which travels through one plane alone. So the light that comes out from this polarizer will propagate only through one particular plane. So this polarizer is just like a slit which blocks all the lights which are traveling through different planes other than the light that travels through this particular plane. And this light is called plane polarized light. When this plane polarized light is allowed to pass through a sample of organic compound, a chiral compound, this chiral organic compound interacts with the plane of the plane polarized light and rotate the plane of the plane polarized light either in the clockwise direction or in the anti-clockwise direction. So the plane polarized light is allowed to pass through the sample which is a solution of organic compound. So this chiral organic compound interacts with the plane polarized light and rotates the plane of the plane polarized light. So the angle to which the plane of the plane polarized light is rotated is called optical rotation or angle of rotation. Therefore, for a molecule to be optically active, it has to be chiral. So what are the conditions for a molecule to be chiral or to have chirality? In 1874, Van 't Hoff proposed a theory. The two most important postulates of his theory have formed the basis for most of our organic chemistry. One is a carbon atom which is attached to four groups. A carbon with four attachments is always having a tetrahedral geometry. So a sp3 carbon with four different bonds is having tetrahedral shape. A molecule having a tetrahedral carbon with four different groups may exist as a pair of isomers which are the mirror images of each other, and they are the enantiomers. So these are the two most important postulates of this Van 't Hoff theory. A carbon atom which is bonded to four different groups is called chiral carbon or asymmetric carbon or stereo center or chiral center. And the molecules which are having this asymmetric or chiral carbon are considered as chiral molecules. They are considered, uh, they are believed to have the handedness. So we have given the two enantiomers of lactic acid here. So here in lactic acid, a carbon is connected to four different groups, and these two are the mirror images, and these are enantiomers. And these enantiomers are chiral. This molecule is chiral, and this enantiomer also is chiral. And these chiral molecules, these asymmetric molecules, can interact with the plane of the plane polarized light and can rotate the plane of the plane polarized light. That's why these molecules are said to be optically active. So far we have seen chirality is the essential condition for a molecule to be optically active. Chirality. Chirality is the essential condition for a molecule to be optically active. What is chirality? Handedness is called chirality. Now you see these two hands are looking like mirror images, but if you lift this hand and put it on the other one, they are not exactly matching. The gloves that you are using for right hand will not suit for left hand. That is called the handedness or non-superimposable nature. So the right and left hand are looking like the mirror images of each other, but these two are different objects. Just like that, the mirror object is always different from the original object, and this is applicable for all molecules. The enantiomers are different from one another, and they are different molecules. So in the earlier days, the presence of asymmetric carbon in a molecule was called as chirality. The presence of asymmetric carbon was considered as essential for a molecule to be optically active. So chirality is essential for the optical activity of a molecule. If chirality is only the presence of an asymmetric carbon, all the molecules with asymmetric carbons should be chiral and should be optically active. So a molecule with asymmetric carbon, it was assumed as chiral, was considered as chiral, and for a molecule to be optically active it should be chiral. In that case, all the molecules containing asymmetric carbon atoms should be chiral and they should be optically active. But let us consider this molecule, mesotartaric acid. It has two chiral atoms, two asymmetric carbon atoms or stereocenters, chiral centers. But still it is optically inactive. Therefore, the mere presence of asymmetric carbon is not enough for a molecule to be chiral or to be optically active. Therefore, now we have to think about changing the conditions for chirality. So far we had been thinking like the very presence of asymmetric carbon gives chirality for a molecule. But we have seen tartaric acid with two asymmetric carbon atoms is achiral. The molecules which are not chiral are called achiral molecules. So tartaric acid, mesotartaric acid with the two chiral centers, two asymmetric centers is achiral. So we have to revise the conditions for chirality. For a molecule to be chiral, it is not enough if it possesses asymmetric carbon atoms alone. Instead, the whole molecule should be asymmetric. So what is meant by the molecule being asymmetric? The molecule should not possess any of the following symmetric elements. For a molecule to be asymmetric, it should not possess plane of symmetry, inversion center, proper axis of rotation, or improper axis of rotation. A molecule which does not possess these four symmetry elements is called asymmetric molecule. Now we shall see about the various symmetry elements. Plane of symmetry is the plane which divides the molecule into two equal halves which are the mirror images of each other. So plane of symmetry is an imaginary plane which is bisecting the molecule into two equal halves which are the mirror images of each other. That is always denoted with the symbol sigma. So just look at this mesotartaric acid molecule. This has a plane of symmetry. This has an imaginary plane here which can divide the molecule into two equal halves, and these two halves are the mirror images of each other, and this imaginary plane is called plane of symmetry. Now center of symmetry or inversion center. So center of symmetry is a point in a molecule from which if you travel in opposite directions to equal distance, you should meet with identical groups. So usually the center of symmetry is the central point of the molecule. So in this molecule 2,4 dimethyl cyclobutane 1,3 dicarboxylic acid, this is the central point of the molecule. From this central point, if you travel in this direction, we meet with carboxyl group, and if you travel in the opposite direction in the same axis at the same distance, we are meeting with another carboxyl group. So when we travel from the central point of the molecule in opposite directions, we are meeting with identical groups at identical distance. So if you travel in this direction, you meet with methyl, and in the same axis if you travel in the opposite direction, the same distance, you are meeting with the same methyl group. So you are meeting with identical groups at identical distance when you travel in the opposite direction from this central point. So this molecule contains a center of symmetry which is otherwise called inversion center, that is always represented with the symbol small I. Proper axis of rotation. So it is an imaginary axis which passes through the molecule. About this axis, when you rotate the molecule to an angle theta, if you are able to produce an equivalent structure, then the molecule is said to have a proper axis of rotation or rotational axis of symmetry. So it is an imaginary axis which goes through the molecule, about which when you do a rotation for angle theta, you have to meet with an equivalent structure. So then this imaginary axis is called axis of rotation, proper axis of rotation or rotational axis of symmetry, which is denoted with the symbol Cn. So the angle to which you have to rotate to get the equivalent structure is theta. So 360 by theta will give you n, which is called order of rotation, which means the number of times you will get equivalent and identical structures when you rotate the molecule for 360 degrees about this rotational axis of symmetry. So rotational or proper axis of rotation with the order n is called n-fold axis of rotation. So let us see how the molecule can be rotated about this axis. So about this C2 axis, the molecule can be rotated. So when it is rotated 180 degree, we get the similar identical structure. So this is inversion center. So when you travel in the opposite directions, let us see it once again. So about this axis, we are rotating by one full rotation gives two similar structures. And this is inversion center. In case of plane of symmetry, we did only one operation, that is the reflection operation. In case of center of symmetry, we did only one operation, that is traveling in opposite direction from the central point of the molecule. In case of rotational axis of symmetry, we do only one operation, that is rotation about an angle, about an axis. In case of improper axis of rotation, we have to perform two operations. One is rotation about an axis which passes through the molecule. Then reflection about a plane which lies perpendicular to that axis. Let me explain that with an example. I have taken 1, 2, 3, 4 tetrachlorocyclobutane, which has the chlorine atoms in the adjacent carbon atoms in the opposite side. So here the CCl bond is upward bond, that is beta. Here the CCl bond is downward, that is alpha. Here it is CCl is beta and here it is alpha. Now let us perform a rotation about an axis which passes through the center of the molecule. So through the center there is an imaginary axis about which I am doing a 90-degree rotation. After doing 90-degree rotation, this carbon comes to this position along with this hydrogen and chlorine. So after 90-degree rotation, we will have this CH bond here and this alpha CCl bond here. After 90-degree rotation about the axis that goes through the center of the molecule, we are going to perform a reflection operation with respect to a plane that contains the 4 carbon atoms. So there is an axis that goes, that is, let us imagine it is perpendicular to the plane of the screen, and the plane is just on the screen. So we have done a rotation about 90 degrees. Now we are doing a reflection with a plane that contains the carbon atoms. So when we do a reflection, what happens? This chlorine in the alpha side comes to the beta and this is reflected to the alpha side. So now we will have chlorine in the beta side and hydrogen in the alpha side. Now you can see this structure is equivalent to the original one. So a rotation followed by reflection gives a structure that is equivalent to the original, and this operation, rotation followed by reflection operation, is called improper axis of rotation. And if you are rotating the molecule by angle theta, then 360 by theta will give the order of improper axis of rotation n. Let us see that with an animation now. So I have taken the three-dimensional structure of the molecule. All the yellow balls are all these yellow balls are chlorine atoms, and the white balls are hydrogen atoms. So we have chlorine in the beta side now. So here it is, now it is down, the CCl bond is downwards. And now if you rotate the molecule by 90°, this yellow ball will move here. And then if you do a reflection, this yellow will go up and the white will come down. So in our earlier discussion, I have told you that for a molecule to be chiral, it should be asymmetric, which means it should not have any of the four symmetry elements. But now we have observed that it is enough if a molecule does not possess the three symmetry elements sigma, I and Sn, and the absence of proper axis of rotation is not mandatory. If all the four symmetry elements are absent, then we call such molecules as asymmetric molecules, but we don't expect the molecule to be asymmetric. It is enough if it is disymmetric. So disymmetric molecule is one which lacks sigma, I and Sn. Therefore, asymmetry is the absence of all the four symmetry elements. We don't expect an asymmetry in the molecule. It's enough if the molecule is having dissymmetry, which means it should not have the symmetry element sigma, I and Sn. Now, the plane of symmetry sigma is equal to S1. Rotation to an angle 360° followed by reflection will give the same structure. So we can say sigma is equal to S1, and inversion center of symmetry I is equal to C2 rotation followed by sigma I reflection. So it is equal to S2. So now dissymmetry is not can be defined in another way, that is absence of Sn, improper axis of rotation, because sigma is S1, I is S2, and all other Sn operations in are coming under this Sn. Therefore dissymmetry is the absence of Sn. So for a molecule to be optically active, it is enough it is not having Sn. At the same time, the asymmetric molecules also are optically active, as they also do not have Sn. Therefore, from all our discussions, we have understood that for a molecule to be optically active, presence of asymmetric carbon is not a must. Presence of chiral carbon is not the most important requirement. Instead, the molecule has to be dissymmetric. The molecule should lack Sn, should not have sigma, I or any other Sn operations. So lack of Sn is enough for a molecule to be optically active, which means the molecule has to be dissymmetric. And we can understand that from these molecules, some allenes with suitable groups, biphenyls, spiranes. These are some examples for molecules which are showing optical activity even in the absence of chiral centers or chiral carbon atoms. Therefore, for a molecule to be optically active, we need not look for an asymmetric carbon or a chiral carbon. It is enough if we look for the dissymmetry in the molecule, which means the absence of sigma, I and Sn, or simply we can say lack of Sn in a molecule makes it optically active. So far, we had been discussing about what is optically active, what are optically active molecules. Now, what is optical rotation? When the plane polarized light, this is the ordinary monochromatic light that passes through the filter here or the polarizer that allows the plane polarized light. When the plane polarized light passes through a chiral molecule, the chiral molecule interacts with the light and rotates the plane of the plane polarized light to an angle theta, either in the clockwise direction or in the anti-clockwise direction. These two are the enantiomers given here. So the enantiomers rotate the plane polarized light in the opposite directions but to the same magnitude. If this is rotating the light by 30 degrees in the clockwise direction, this will rotate the light by 30 degrees in the anticlockwise direction. So optical rotation alpha is the angle uh, through which a compound rotates the plane of the plane polarized light. So optical rotation alpha is the angle to which the plane of the plane polarized light is rotated. The observed angle of rotation depends upon the nature of the compound, temperature, the solvent used, the most importantly the concentration of the solution and the length of the polarimeter tube, sample tube, which we call as the cell, and on the wavelength of the light used. So the angle of rotation is different for different concentrations and for different length of the sample tube. Therefore, it is necessary to introduce a standard method by which the rotating powers of an organic compound can be represented. The rotating powers of the organic compounds may be compared. Thus, the measurement of optical activity of organic molecules or any compound is reported in terms of specific rotation or molecular rotation. Before going into the specific rotation, we shall understand the impact of concentration of the solution and length of the tube on the optical rotation or the angle of rotation. The angle of rotation or the optical rotation alpha, the observed optical rotation alpha, is proportional to the concentration of the solution. If the concentration increases, then the number of chiral molecules present in the solution increases, and when there are more number of chiral molecules present in the solution, they will rotate the plane polarized light to a higher angle. Likewise, when the length of the sample tube increases, the plane polarized light has to pass through more number of molecules, chiral molecules, and it has to interact with more number of chiral molecules. Therefore, when the concentration increases, or when the length of the sample tube increases, the plane polarized light has to travel through more number of chiral molecules. So when it interacts with more number of chiral molecules, the angle of rotation, the optical rotation alpha, also increases. Therefore, alpha is proportional to the concentration of the solution. Alpha is proportional to the length of the sample tube L. Therefore, alpha, the observed rotation, is proportional to C and proportional to L, and this proportionality can be replaced by a proportionality constant. Therefore, alpha, the observed angle of rotation, becomes equal to a constant into concentration of the solution into length of the sample tube. This proportionality constant is called as specific rotation of a sample. When the concentration is, and this concentration is given with the unit gram per ml, length of the sample tube is given in decimeters. Therefore, when concentration is 1 gram per ml and length of the sample tube is 1 decimeter, then C and L become 1. Therefore, the observed angle of rotation is equal to this constant, and that constant is called specific rotation. Now, keeping this specific rotation in one side, bring this concentration and L to the other side. Now you will get an equation for specific rotation. And this equation gives specific rotation is equal to the optical rotation divided by concentration into length. So specific rotation of a molecule is the rotation in degrees observed upon passing the polarized light through a path length of 1 decimeter and a concentration of 1 gram per ml. So specific rotation is nothing but the angle of rotation when L is 1, C is 1. So when the length of the tube is 1 decimeter and the concentration of the sample is 1 gram per ml, this alpha angle of rotation becomes equal to specific rotation. So alpha within the square bracket is called specific rotation. T, because the specific rotation also changes with the temperature. So always whenever you give the specific rotation, you have to mention the temperature here, and normally we make use of 25 degrees centigrade or 298 Kelvin, and this is the wavelength of the light lambda, and very often you will find a capital D here that represents the sodium D line with a wavelength 589 nanometers. So this L is the length of the sample tube or the path length of the sample. C is the concentration, and this specific rotation always should have the sign, the plus or minus. Plus for clockwise rotation and minus for anticlockwise rotation. So far we had been discussing about the optical rotation, specific rotation. Now, if you are given a mixture of enantiomers, or if you are given a mixture of enantiomers, how will you find out the enantiomeric excess, or what is optical purity? That we shall discuss now. So the percentage optical purity of a sample is equal to the specific rotation of the pure sample, the specific rotation of the sample given divided by the specific rotation of the pure enantiomer into 100. And this percentage optical purity is equal to the enantiomeric excess. So what is enantiomeric excess? A racemic mixture will have 50% dextrorotatory and 50% levorotatory enantiomers. And instead of having 50-50, if one enantiomer is in excess, and what is that excess? The excess of one enantiomer over the racemic mixture. Let us say uh, a, a, a sample given is 30% pure. It means there is 30% pure one enantiomer dextroisomer, let us say 30% dextroisomer is in pure form, and the remaining 70% is a racemic mixture, which means 35% will be dextro and 35% will be levorotatory. So apart from the racemic mixture, what is the excess of one enantiomer? So the excess of one enantiomer over the racemic mixture is called as enantiomeric excess. And we shall see how we can calculate all this. So once again, the optical purity is always given in percentage. So that is called percentage optical purity. This can be calculated by taking the specific rotation of the given sample in the numerator and the specific rotation of the pure enantiomer in the denominator, then multiply it by 100. That is called the percentage optical purity. Now let us consider the specific rotations of alanine, the dextrorotatory and levorotatory enantiomers of alanine. Alanine is an alpha amino acid. This is the dextrorotatory enantiomer. This rotates the plane of the plane polarized light by an angle of 14 degrees. So the enantiomerically pure dextrorotatory alanine rotates the plane of the plane polarized light by 14 degrees in the clockwise direction. Similarly, the levorotatory alanine, the other enantiomer, rotates the plane of the plane polarized light to the same angle 14 degrees but in the opposite direction. So the enantiomers are rotating the plane of the plane polarized light to the same angle but in opposite directions. So let us consider this cell with complete red is pure dextrorotatory alanine. This green is pure levorotatory alanine. Now if you are given a mixture of dextrorotatory and levorotatory enantiomers, the red for dextro and green for levo. So we are given a sample that contains 90% dextrorotatory isomer, 10% levorotatory isomer. So the 10% levorotatory isomer, let us take separately here, that rotates the light in the anticlockwise direction. The 90% of the dextrorotatory isomer in the mixture will rotate in the light in the clockwise direction. So 10% of this clockwise rotation is used for nullifying the rotation by levorotatory isomer. So the rotation by levorotatory isomer here is cancelled by the rotation by 10% of the dextrorotatory isomer. So 10% levo and 10% dextro, they form a racemic mixture, and what is remaining here is the pure enantiomer, and that rotates the light in the clockwise direction. So this mixture of 90% dextrorotatory isomer and 10% levorotatory isomer is having an enantiomeric excess of 80%. So there is 80% excess of dextrorotatory isomer. Similarly, here we are given a mixture that contains 60% dextro and 40% levorotatory isomer. So the rotation by 40% levorotatory isomer will be cancelled by the 40% of the dextrorotatory isomer, and after that there will be remaining 20%. So that 20% is the pure enantiomerically pure substance. Therefore this mixture contains 20% of dextrorotatory isomer in excess, and that is its enantiomeric excess. In case of racemic mixtures, there is no enantiomeric excess. There is 50% dextro and 50% levo. There is no enantiomeric excess. Rotation by levorotatory isomer is equal to the rotation by dextrorotatory isomer. Only thing is they are in the opposite direction. So the rotation of the plane polarized light is cancelled by each other, and as a net result there will not be any optical rotation. Let us try to solve a problem now. Calculate the enantiomeric excess of a mixture of two bromobutanes with an observed specific rotation of plus 18.5 degrees. So the actual specific rotation of 2-bromobutane with the S configuration, we will discuss about the absolute configurations later. So this dextrorotatory 2-bromobutane has the specific rotation of plus 23.1 degrees. That is the value given for us. So the given sample has a specific rotation of plus 18.5. The specific rotation of the dextrorotatory isomer of 2-bromobutane is plus 23.1. In that case, what is its optical purity? So the percentage optical purity is the specific rotation of the given sample divided by the specific rotation of the pure enantiomer into 100. So 18.5 is the specific rotation of the given sample, that is divided by 23.1 the specific rotation of the pure dextrorotatory isomer, that is multiplied by 100, that gives 80%, which means there is 80% excess of dextrorotatory isomer in the mixture. So the remaining 20% is racemic. That means in the 20%, remaining 20%, 10% should be dextro and 10% should be levo. So already there is 80% pure or excess of dextrorotatory isomer. The racemic mixture has another 10% of dextrorotatory isomer. So altogether 80 plus 10, 90% of dextrorotatory isomer is there in the mixture, and 10% is the levorotatory isomer. So this is how you can try to calculate the enantiomeric excess or optical purity, the percentage of dextrorotatory enantiomer, percentage of levorotatory enantiomer, all that. And we will continue with some other topics on stereochemistry in the future lectures. Thank you.